On May 14, 2024, deputies from the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office responded to a report of a dead dog wrapped in a plastic bag at Fort DeSoto Park in St. Petersburg, Florida. When they arrived, they found a 4-year-old bulldog mix floating in the mangroves. The dog had been decapitated. Using a microchip still embedded in the animal's body, Pinellas County Animal Services identified the dog as Dexter, a shelter favorite known among staff and volunteers for his gentle temperament and friendly personality. He had won awards at the shelter for his sweet nature and his ability to get along with other animals. Dexter had been adopted from Pinellas County Animal Services just 4 days earlier, on May 10th, by a 66-year-old man named Domingo Rodriguez. Surveillance cameras at the park captured Rodriguez's gray pickup truck entering Fort DeSoto on May 11th, with a large cooler visible in the truck bed. When deputies questioned Rodriguez at his home, he initially claimed Dexter must have run away overnight. His wife, however, told investigators that Dexter was alive and well before she went to bed on May 10th, and that when she woke on Saturday morning, both Rodriguez and the dog were gone. Investigators noted multiple inconsistencies and contradictions in Rodriguez's account. Bags consistent with the one Dexter was found in were observed at Rodriguez's residence. He was arrested and charged with 1 count of animal cruelty and 1 count of unlawful disposal of bodies of dead animals. The case drew immediate public outrage. Over 100 animal advocates rallied outside the Pinellas County Courthouse during Rodriguez's court hearings, carrying signs demanding justice for Dexter. The organization in defense of animals collected nearly 15,000 petition signatures calling for maximum sentencing. In February 2025, a jury found Rodriguez guilty of aggravated cruelty to animals and unlawful disposal of dead animals. The judge sentenced him to 1 year and 60 days in county jail, the maximum penalty available under the misdemeanor statute, plus the maximum fine of $5,000 in court costs. Rodriguez was later released on $55,000 bond while appealing his conviction, under conditions that included surrendering his passport and driver's license, wearing a monitor, and having no contact with animals. Dexter's case became the emotional catalyst for what would become one of the most significant animal protection legislative packages Florida has ever enacted. His story, combined with growing national awareness about the connection between animal cruelty and violence against humans, pushed Florida lawmakers to act in ways the state had not acted before. On May 28, 2025, Governor Ron DeSantis signed House Bill 255 into law at a ceremony in Loxahatchee. The legislation, officially titled the Aggravated Animal Cruelty Bill and commonly known as Dexter's Law, introduced 2 major changes to Florida's legal framework around animal abuse. The first change took effect on July 1, 2025, and fundamentally altered how Florida courts sentence individuals convicted of the most severe forms of animal cruelty. Under the previous system, aggravated animal cruelty was already classified as a third-degree felony, punishable by up to 5 years in prison and a $10,000 fine. However, many offenders received lighter sentences because the sentencing guidelines did not specifically elevate cases involving deliberate torture. Dexter's Law created a 1.25 times sentencing multiplier under the Florida Criminal Punishment Code. When a defendant is convicted of aggravated animal cruelty that involves the knowing and intentional torture or torment of an animal resulting in injury, mutilation, or death, the court must multiply the total sentence points by 1.25. This mathematical increase pushes more convicted offenders above the threshold where prison time becomes mandatory rather than optional. The multiplier was deliberately crafted to apply only to companion animals. The bill specifies that the enhanced sentencing does not apply to animals used for agricultural purposes or to captive wildlife. This distinction was designed to avoid any conflict with hunting, fishing, or agricultural practices in Florida. Representative Linda Cheney, the Republican lawmaker from St. Pete Beach who filed the bill, stated in her official explanation that the legislation was necessary because individuals who commit acts of cruelty against animals are statistically linked to future violence against humans. She cited FBI research indicating that animal abusers are 5 times more likely to harm other people. She also referenced studies showing that animal abuse was present in 88% of homes being investigated for child abuse. The second major component of Dexter's Law, and the one that received the most public attention, took effect on January 1, 2026. On that date, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement launched the state's first searchable public database of individuals convicted of animal cruelty. The registry lists the names of people who have been convicted of, or who have entered a plea of guilty or no contest to, violations of Florida Statute 828.12, which covers both misdemeanor animal cruelty and felony aggravated animal cruelty. The database is accessible to anyone through the FDLE website. No special credentials, accounts, or law enforcement access is required. The system pulls directly from court records and is updated regularly as new qualifying convictions occur. According to CBS Miami, the database listed 1,668 names when it first went live. Names remain on the database for 10 years after conviction, according to animal advocate Debbie Dorino, who helped push the legislation and previously created a county-level animal abuse database in Volusia County. Reoffenders may be listed again for an additional 10-year period. Dorino has been clear about what the database is and what it is not. She has explained publicly that it is not a registry in the traditional sense where individuals must self-register or be court-ordered to sign up. It is a resource tool that compiles public court records into one searchable location. The database is designed to serve several specific audiences. Animal shelters and rescue organizations can screen potential adopters before placing animals. Foster groups can check volunteers. Breeders and pet sellers can evaluate potential buyers. Private citizens looking to rehome animals through platforms like Facebook or Craigslist can search a name before handing over a pet. Law enforcement and investigators can use it to detect patterns of cruelty across county lines. Before this statewide system existed, the landscape of animal cruelty tracking in Florida was fragmented. Only a handful of counties maintained their own local registries. Hillsborough County, Marion County, Seminole County, and Volusia County were among those with local databases. However, these local lists applied only within county boundaries and were not automatically shared with other jurisdictions. If someone was convicted of animal cruelty in Hillsborough County and then moved to Broward County to adopt a pet, the Broward shelter had no easy way to find that conviction. The statewide database eliminates that gap. Chelsea Waldeck, division director at the Hillsborough County Pet Resource Center, told reporters that the shelter had already been using the statewide system daily since its launch. She noted that the new system allows them to check applicants statewide, which was not possible before. At the same time, the database's initial rollout faced criticism. When it first went live, it listed only first and last names with no additional identifying information such as dates of birth, photographs, counties of conviction, or offense details. Shelters and rescues pointed out that this made it difficult to confirm whether an applicant was actually the same person listed in the database, particularly with common names. After advocates raised concerns publicly, the FDLE updated the database to include middle names or middle initials. Advocates have acknowledged this as a step forward but continue to push for further improvements, including felony versus misdemeanor classification, the specific statute violated, and the county where the conviction occurred. Dorino has stated that FDLE attorneys have raised legal questions about publishing certain additional identifiers, and advocates are planning to push for clearer legislative direction during the 2026 session. Dexter's Law also made a change that received less public attention, but carries significant legal weight. The legislation amended Florida statutes 943.0585 and 943.059 to permanently bar anyone who pleads guilty or no contest to any violation of Section 828.12 from ever sealing or expunging their criminal record. This prohibition applies even when the court withholds adjudication, which previously allowed some defendants to avoid a formal conviction on their record. Under the old system, a person who received a withhold of adjudication for animal cruelty could, after a waiting period, petition to have their record sealed or eventually expunged. Dexter's Law closed that door entirely. Any plea or conviction under the animal cruelty statute now creates a permanent criminal record that cannot be hidden. Legal analysts have noted that this provision, combined with the public database, creates a two-layer accountability system. The criminal record follows the individual through background checks for employment, housing, and other purposes. The public database makes the conviction visible to anyone who searches the FDLE website. Dexter's law was not the only animal protection measure Governor DeSantis signed on May 28, 2025. At the same ceremony, he signed Senate Bill 150, known as Trooper's Law. This legislation addressed a different but equally visible form of animal cruelty that had generated national attention during the 2024 hurricane season. During Hurricane Milton in October 2024, a 5-year-old bulldog terrier was found tied to a fence along Interstate 75 near Tampa. Floodwaters had risen to the dog's chest. A Florida Highway Patrol trooper rescued the animal, and photographs and video of the rescue spread rapidly across social media, generating widespread outrage. The dog was given the name Trooper in honor of his rescuer and was eventually adopted by a couple in Parkland after being cared for at the Tallahassee Humane Society. His previous owner, identified as Giovanni Aldama Garcia, was subsequently charged with aggravated cruelty to animals. Trooper's Law took effect on October 1, 2025, and specifically criminalized the act of restraining a dog outdoors during a declared natural disaster or when a mandatory or voluntary evacuation order is in effect and then abandoning the animal. The law defines restraint as tethering a dog to a stationary object such as a tree, stake, or fence using a rope, chain, or leash. Abandonment under the law occurs when the owner leaves the property or fails to retrieve the dog during the emergency. Violating Trooper's Law is a third-degree felony, punishable by up to 5 years in prison and a fine of up to $10,000. If the dog survives without serious injury, the offense may alternatively be charged as a first-degree misdemeanor, carrying up to 1 year in jail and a $1,000 fine. The law is narrowly tailored to apply only to dogs during declared emergencies. It does not cover other animals, although general animal cruelty statutes continue to apply to all species. Senator Don Gates, the Senate sponsor, stated during the legislative process that the bill was about addressing a specific and preventable form of cruelty during Florida's increasingly severe hurricane seasons. The Humane Society of the United States, the Florida Smart Justice Alliance, and the Florida Animal Control Association all supported the legislation. A third piece of animal protection legislation also took effect in 2025. House Bill 593, known as the Pam Rock Act, was named after Pamela Rock, a 62-year-old mail carrier in Putnam County, who was killed in 2022 when she was attacked by a pack of 5 dogs after her mail truck broke down in a rural area. The Pam Rock Act strengthened Florida's dangerous dog regulations. Under the law, owners of dogs that have been officially designated as dangerous are now required to have their animals microchipped, properly secured, and covered by at least $100,000 in liability insurance. The law also expanded the authority of animal control officers during investigations and established harsher penalties for owners who fail to surrender a dangerous dog after a qualifying incident or who do not come forward after their dog has caused serious injury. If a dog labeled as dangerous is given to authorities, the law now explicitly permits humane euthanasia under specified circumstances. Together, Dexter's Law, Trooper's Law, and the Pam Rock Act represent what animal welfare organizations have described as one of the most comprehensive packages of animal protection legislation Florida has ever adopted in a single legislative session. Separately from the criminal law changes, Florida also enacted new consumer protection regulations for the pet insurance industry. House Bill 655, which took effect on January 1, 2026, formally classifies pet insurance as property insurance under Florida law and establishes a regulatory framework for how these policies are sold, marketed, and administered. The legislation was passed unanimously by both chambers and signed by Governor DeSantis on April 22, 2025. According to a 2025 report from the North American Pet Health Insurance Association, 7.03 million pets were insured across North America at the end of 2024, with total premium volume in the United States reaching $4.7 billion. Florida is the 14th state to enact formal pet insurance regulations. The law requires insurers to clearly disclose the formulas they use to determine claim payments, how pre-existing conditions are defined, what waiting periods apply, and whether medical examinations are required. It mandates a review period of at least 30 days during which new policyholders can return the policy for a full refund. Insurers may exclude pre-existing conditions, but must prove those conditions existed before the policy was purchased. They can set waiting periods for illnesses, but not for accidents. Eligibility cannot be conditioned on participation in wellness programs. One of the law's most significant provisions targets the marketing of pet wellness programs. These subscription-based programs provide general health goods and services, but are not insurance products. Under HB 655, wellness programs cannot be marketed as insurance. If offered alongside a pet insurance policy, the wellness program must be optional, clearly separated, and independently priced. Insurance agents selling pet insurance in Florida now require specific training on the products. These legislative developments in Florida reflect a broader national trend toward strengthening animal protection laws. The FBI began tracking animal cruelty as a distinct category in its National Incident-Based Reporting System in January 2016, elevating it to the same reporting tier as major felonies like arson and kidnapping. The decision was driven by decades of research establishing connections between animal cruelty and violence against humans. According to data compiled by Shelter Animals Count, approximately 70% of individuals who committed domestic violence were also found to be animal abusers, and roughly 85% of people arrested for animal abuse had multiple prior arrests. The FBI Law Enforcement Bulletin published an article in August 2024 reaffirming these connections. At the state level, Tennessee launched the first statewide public animal abuser registry in 2016. New York City, Suffolk County in New York, and Cook County in Illinois maintain local versions. California and Maryland have introduced similar legislation but have not yet enacted it. As of February 2026, Florida's animal protection framework continues to develop. The statewide animal abuse database maintained by the FDLE is operational and being used by shelters across the state, though advocates continue to push for expanded identifying information in the listings. The enhanced sentencing provisions under Dexter's law are being applied by courts. Trooper's law is in effect heading into what meteorologists anticipate will be another active hurricane season. The Pam Rock Act's dangerous dog provisions are being implemented by animal control agencies. The pet insurance regulations under HB 655 are reshaping how insurers operate in Florida and how consumers evaluate coverage options. At the same time, observers and legal analysts note areas where enforcement remains uncertain. The FDLE database currently includes only charges filed on or after January 1, 2026, meaning that individuals convicted of animal cruelty before that date do not appear in the system. Advocates have expressed concern that the database will take time to become a fully comprehensive tool. The question of whether the database will eventually include photographs, offense details, and county of conviction information remains unresolved, with FDLE attorneys citing legal concerns about publishing certain identifiers. During the 2026 legislative session, which began on January 13th, animal welfare advocates are expected to push for amendments that would address these gaps. The Dexter case itself is not fully closed from a legal standpoint. Rodriguez was released on bond in July 2025 while his conviction is being appealed. His attorney has argued that there are evidentiary gaps in the prosecution's case. The appeal remains pending. Meanwhile, the shelters and rescue organizations that interact most directly with the adoption process continue to incorporate the new tools into their daily operations. The Hillsborough County Pet Resource Center, Friends of Strays in St. Petersburg, and Broward County Animal Care have all publicly confirmed that they are using the statewide database as part of their screening procedures. Debbie Dorino, the animal advocate who was instrumental in pushing Dexter's law through the legislature and who previously created the Volusia County Animal Abuse Database, has emphasized that the database is one layer of protection, but not a replacement for thorough adoption screening. She has noted publicly that many individuals who abuse animals obtain them through informal channels such as Facebook, Craigslist, and other online platforms where no screening takes place. She has encouraged anyone rehoming a pet privately to check the database before transferring an animal to a new owner. The broader picture in Florida suggests a state moving towards significantly stronger legal protections for animals, driven by high-profile cases that generated public pressure, growing scientific evidence about the link between animal abuse and human violence, and bipartisan legislative support. All three major bills passed with broad support. Dexter's law was sponsored by a Republican representative with bipartisan co-sponsors. Trooper's law was sponsored by a Republican senator with backing from major animal welfare organizations. The pet insurance bill passed unanimously. Whether these measures will lead to measurable reductions in animal cruelty over time remains to be seen. The creation of a statewide database, the enhancement of criminal penalties, the criminalization of disaster abandonment, and the regulation of pet insurance together represent a significant expansion of animal welfare law in Florida. Further developments are expected as more information becomes available and as the 2026 legislative session progresses. This video presents fact-based information and context. It does not provide advice or endorsements.